Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. This is the lesson 3 of our subject working with individuals and families entitled the Casework Method. This presentation will focus on the different definitions of casework as well as the core components of casework. But in this presentation, we will only be discussing the three components, which are the person, problem, and place, because the last component, which is process, will be discussed separately. To start with, what is casework? One of the most famous personalities in the social work field, who is Helen Harris Berman, defined casework as a process used by human welfare agencies to help individuals to cope more effectively with their problems of social functioning. Since casework is a method, then it has to be a process. A process means a systematic means or a systematic steps of doing a certain activity. So since casework has a process or has its own process, then we have to follow it. If a worker or an employee is doing a similar job, or similar task but doesn't follow the process of casework, then we could not consider it a casework process or casework method. It is used by the different social welfare agencies, specifically or especially social work agencies, since one guidelines of being a social work agency is when you use one or all of the methods of social work, helping people to cope more effectively with their problems of social functioning. I believe social functioning concept was already discussed in the previous subjects, but just for the purpose of review and for this presentation, we would like to review that social functioning means a person is able to relate to himself, is able to relate to other people, he he is able to interact with different kinds of people. A person is said to be socially functioning if he or she has the capacity to solve his or her own problem. And lastly, as a person is said to be socially functioning if he will be able or he is able to help other people solve their own problems. Another definition is given by Esther Villoria. No? As you can observe, this definition is quite long because the definition itself describes the process of the casework method. No? It consists of a variety of activities that may include giving of material assistance, that's casework, referrals to other community facilities, that's casework, especially if your agency or if your community cannot provide the needs of that person or the people or the community. Rendering emotional and psychological support through sensitive listening, expressions of acceptance and reassurance, etc., etc. So as you can observe, the definition given by Esther Villoria is actually series of activities and or processes that has something to do with casework. But the end goal is in order for an individual to meet his needs or to solve his problem. So moving on to the components of casework. Again, there are four components of casework. We have the person, the place, the problem, and the process. But we will only be discussing the first three components, since process will be discussed thoroughly since it's a quite long topic to discuss. First component is the person. So when we talk about person, um, the person is a common term used by many other professionals or even us as normal individuals. We use person, but it is being used in the social work profession as a man, a woman, or child, or anyone, or yes, any individual who finds himself or is found to be in need of some help in some aspect of his social or emotional living. That means if a person has a problem and he needs some help from other people because he is not able to help his own um, problem or solve his own problem, then he is considered to be the person as far as social work is concerned. Other term, especially, other term to that, no, and technically we use the term client to describe that person. In identifying the person or the client, before a person can be a client of a social worker, the social worker must possess three: knowledge. First, basic knowledge of human behavior. That is why, as students, you are being taught of the different subjects related to human behavior, related to personalities, related to understanding the attitude and behavior of every individual, because it is needed, no, in order for you to be able to find out that your client is eligible to be a client. You need to understand him or her. The social worker must also possess knowledge about stress, about different kinds of stresses. We are unfortunately lucky in the Philippines or in Mindanao, because especially in Mindanao or in Maguindanao, because we got the chance to be equipped, or no, be aware with the different sorts of problems and kinds or forms of stresses, no. In that way, we were able to understand people easily. We were able to grasp different behaviors of different people. And another thing is that Mindanao, or Maguindanao to be specific, is a home for a multicultural people. So we get to understand the different kinds of personalities of the different kinds of people. And lastly, the social worker must possess knowledge on how the human being respond to those problems. No? So as you can see, even if you are not a social worker, you're already aware of that, because when as an individual, you have your own way of responding to your own stresses. And then you have your friends who sometimes keep on sharing their problems with you. You have your family members or relatives, or we get to watch some shows, no, reality shows that showcase different forms of personalities. So we are already inclined with solving problems. In fact, Filipinos love solving other people's problems, no. But as far as casework is concerned, when you are a social worker, you have to be fixed, knowing the three, no, knowing the human behavior, knowing the different kinds of forms of stresses, and knowing how people respond to the problems. Did they do they solve it? Do they fight against each other in order for one person to succeed or to solve his or her own problem, or do we move out from our community in order to forget those problems? There are many forms of um, responding to different problems. In social work and in casework, we always need to think that as social workers, we believe that our profession or casework method is person-centered rather than problem-focused. To say it simpler, that means even if the person comes to you because he or she has a problem, before we solve the person's problem, we always have to consider the person himself. How is he? How is he before the problem? How is he after the problem? How is he adjusting to the existence of his problem? How do you think can he solve his problem with professional help from a social worker? No, it's I think it's safe to say that the problem is just an instrument in order for us to help the person develop his own personality and his own way of solving his own problem. Social work is person-centered because the problem that he or she presents to you, being his or her social worker, is just a gateway or a gate pass in order for you to enter into your client's life and along the way help him on how he is able to, or help him how he can solve his own problem, because the problem of the client that he presented is just actually one of the problems that he has. So if our job is just to solve that one problem, how about the other problems that he has? No, so that means if he presents a problem, we use that, as an instrument to enter his life, in his life, and teach him or help himself by teaching him how to solve his own problem, how to equip him with enough knowledge and skills in order for him to carry his own loads of stresses and along the way solve his own stresses and problems. Okay, so as a social worker, it is also important for us to know the different roles or social roles of an individual. May that be a client or a worker or any individual. That's general, no? The social roles of an individual, whoever you are. You need to know that. No, we need to know that as social workers, because it is also one way of understanding the behavior of your client or an individual. If you don't know the different social roles of a person, chances are, even if you as a social worker will find it difficult for you to solve your own problem. Okay? So you have to identify the different social roles and how does it affect our individuality that could somehow um, produce problems or stresses. So there are three social roles identified. First is the prescribed role. So when we talk of prescribed role, it means that is the role that is expected by the norms and expectations of society. No, prescribed roles are the roles that the people or the society in general identify. No, that hey, you need to follow this or you need to be like that because it's the society's dictation. No, it's the society's identification that as for example, as a mother, you're expected to by the community. You're expected to stay at home 24/7. No, and that's a prescribed role. It's a prescribed role because it can passively be changed based on the person's traditions or culture or beliefs. Okay, or it can also be changed based on the situation of the family. For example, in that setting, the mother. Subjective role, on the other hand, is what the person ascribes to himself in a specific role. Okay, getting that example, mother as yeah, the mother. The prescribed role the society provides or expect the society's expectations in a mother is to stay at home and take care of his or her child, or her child, I mean mother, not to take care of her child. But as a person, as a mother who wants the best for her child, there is that subjective role that is being developed. And what is that? It's what you ascribe to yourself in that specific role. As a mother, I need to provide for my child while taking care of him or her. Okay, so in that way, the mother would think I have to take care of him or her, but also at the same time I need to earn because maybe my husband's income is not enough. So I need to earn because I need to support the family also. It's not only the father who will support. Okay, so that is the subjective role. That means you are giving yourself the responsibility and obligation to fulfill a specific role because that is what you believe in. Okay? On the other hand, enacted role means it's which the person performs in that what he thinks the role entails. No? Since there are different variables, there are different situations that come along the way of being a mother, kung ano yung nangyayari, kung ano yung nagagawa mo, that became your enacted role. No? Yes, you want to earn for your family, you want to help for your family, but at the end of the day, you have no choice because who will take care of your children? Who will take care of the needs of your husband? No? So, uh, ang ending nun, there are some roles that you portray unexpectedly because it's what the situation calls for. Okay, so those are the three different types of social roles. You can provide further examples in your own situations in order for you to understand it easily. Stress. Nobody knows, I mean, nobody does not know stress. Okay? Everyone loves stress because it makes us stronger. Anyway, not stress. It's a state or strain on the body or mind, sometimes on both. Um, we always know what stress means, especially because everyone feels it. Everyone thinks it's in ourselves already. Okay, so when we talk about stress, basically that is what bothers us. Okay, that's the response of our body towards a certain problem, or our mind towards a certain problem. So stress components: first, the stress factor, which threatens the person's well-being; second, the value, which is being threatened; and the third, the person's reactions to stress. Okay. Um, when you talk about stress, you have to look into that three components in order for it to exist as a stress. Okay? So first component, the stress factor. What bothers you? What is your problem? What boggles in your mind in a way that you are not functioning properly? You have to identify that one. And next, after identifying, oh, this is my problem, this is what bothers me, exam is approaching. Okay. Second, the value which is being threatened. You identify what is being threatened. What value is that? Is it your personality? Is it something, your performance in school? Is it the expectations of the society? Because if there is no value that is being threatened, then there is no stress at all. Okay? And lastly, your reaction to stress. How are you going to face the stress? How are you going to solve it or to fight for it, to fight it in a way that it will be eliminated or prevented, if not eliminated? Okay? So, in every individual, we have our different modes of adaptation, or that is how we respond to stress. So there are three modes of adaptation actually. First, we have the fight. No, there are people who have problems, and then their way of solving it is to deal with it, to face it. Okay, it could be physical or verbal projection of angry feelings on others. um Fight would mean going to that person if that person causes the stress, going to that person and talking about, or talking with him, no, talking about the issues with him or her. Or it could also be projecting it to other people. No, you have a problem with one person and then you get angry with other person. Okay. Flight means physically moving away from the problem. There are other people who do this one. If you have a problem, what you do? You drink. You you travel. I have a friend. Every time he has a problem, she has a problem, she goes to the terminal of Davao, and then she goes to Davao alone, and then she goes back home. Round trip. Right? That's her way of dealing with her own stresses. It can also be resorting to substances. Okay, drinking, smoking. So that's a mode of adaptation of responding stress. It's flight because it's temporarily going away. It's temporarily preventing, or what they call that, moving out of your problem. You do not want to face it. You just want to let it go. But mind you, this is kind of unhealthy because there will be times that when you go back to the situation, the problem is still there. So you still need to fight for it, no? But there are other people and other circumstances that after going back to the situation or going back to the area, the problem is gone. So that can be effective also depending on the situation. And then, okay, and then the third one, The third mode of adaptation is also very applicable here in the Philippines because of our um, being sociable, our being extrovert, our skill in socializing. Okay, and this is pairing. So pairing means you look for someone who can help you, who can talk to you and listen to your problems and stresses, and he or she processes it, and at the end of the day, you stand up stronger because you are being encouraged, you are being motivated by that specific person, or you became friends with that person. And then, especially if your problem, or if your stress is something to do with a person, you look for another person to talk about it, and then forget about it at some point in time, before fighting or before solving it. Okay, so in extreme situations when stresses is so stressful, no, it's so heavy, the person may become apathetic, resigned, mentally disoriented, immobile, or hyperactive. Those are all negative response to stress. Okay, and we all know that because I believe most of us have gone through those extreme situations, to the point that sometimes we care less anymore because we're already tired. Sometimes you're being forgetful, no, mentally disoriented. You're being forgetful because of the different things that you are thinking. Sometimes you're getting OA. You know? You're overacting on something because of trying to forget about the problem. Okay. And again, this is not true to 100% of the people. Most or some people have experienced this one. And we also need to understand clients' motivation and capacity, because this is very helpful in the casework method, identifying the motivation and capacity of a person. No? It could be their strength, and it could help you also along the way, in the process of the casework method. It could make your client's relationship easier. It could help you solve the problem lighter, because of the motivation and capacity of your client or individual. So when we say motivation, it means the person's taking action based on his thoughts and feelings. Okay? What motivates a person? What drives a person? Motivation means drive. What drives a person to talk to someone? It's motivation. What drives a person to go to the social work agency to seek help? That's motivation. And client's capacity is our ability to do the things after we are being motivated. Because even if you are motivated but you don't have the capacity to do a thing, then your motivation is useless. Okay? So the capacity, there are three types. We have emotional capacity, social intelligence capacity, and physical capacity. Emotional capacity is our ability or capacity to think properly, to think well. Our ability to um, respond to the stress with corresponding proper emotions. No, social intelligence capacity mean our capacity to process our problem, our capacity to organize our thoughts. No, we have perceptiveness, ability to communicate. It's a capacity because not all people are being endowed with proper ability to communicate with other people. No? Our capacity for attention and to think constructively. Okay, so that's social intelligence capacity. And lastly, physical capacity is our biological capacity. Our capacity to move, our capacity to walk in order for us to go to one place or the other to solve the problem. Yes, casework is also known as working with individuals and family. Um, and it is very important for us to know not only the behavior of a person or client, but also his or her family in general. Why? Because we have this term total family approach or family-centered approach, wherein when you have your client who comes to you or who is being referred to you or whom you have reached out, it is impossible for you as a social worker to solve that client's problem without knowing his or her family and without understanding the patterns or the behavior of the family. Okay. Another thing is because some, if not most, of the problems of a person is rooted in the family. No, sometimes they present to you a problem which is very far from family relationships or family situations, but when you go through data gathering, when you go through assessment, sometimes you'll get to know that it is rooted with problems in their family and whatsoever. So that is why it's very important for us to understand the family of the client, so that the family could help us in understanding our client and along the way could help us in solving the problem of our client. The second component is the problem. Basically, when we say problem, we all know this, it's what gives us difficulty. No? It's what bothers us. But in the social work point of view, it is being defined as something or some needs which are not being met. Okay, that is the problem. It could also be a question or a situation that presents uncertainty, perplexity, or difficulty. So why do clients fail to solve their problems? And um, along the way, they go to social work agencies and seek help. So first, and this is the most common in the Philippines, unavailable resources. Philippines is a third world country. We lack some resources. Though in Mindanao, we are known to be the food basket of the Philippines, but the problem is that it is not being processed properly, and so the distribution is quite complex. And in a way, we see the poorest region located in Mindanao. Okay, so unavailable resources. Um, Other people do not want to be client, and so what they do is they go to their neighbors and to their relatives in order to borrow money or to borrow goods or groceries. No, but please let the community know that if time will come that there is no one to go to, then the social work agency is there. But it's not just in the form of a dole out or just asking and then giving. Okay, so there's a process to that. Another thing is ignorance or lack of information about ways of solving problems. Especially if a person is um, only inclined with a specific situation, he is aloof with the larger community, he is um, not so familiar or not acquainted with social media platforms, TV, radio, news. So there are those are some of the things that clients will not be able to solve their own problem, and they need another people to help them or to facilitate the solution of the problem. Another is depletion of emotional and physical energy. The person is too exhausted to solve his own problem, maybe because he's already tired of solving different previous problems. So the energy is already lacking, the hopes is already lacking. So they tend to go to the social work agencies. Okay, so what you can see is the list of some problem typology, especially why our clients go to the social work agency. Because if it is only for money, other people, well, as far as Mindanao is concerned or Maguindanao is concerned, other people would be hesitant muna on or in going to the social work agencies, because we have this culture in Maguindanao, we call it maratabat, no, or pride in Tagalog, wherein we don't want to be helped as much as we can. Okay? What we want is to help. We don't want to be a burden to other people. But there are some circumstances that we cannot um, prevent that these kinds of problems happen. Okay, so problems of livelihood, the case of unemployment and underemployment in the Philippines is very high. So it to the point that it becomes a problem that needs to be facilitated by the social work agency sometimes, but not in the form of employing them to the agencies, but maybe providing opportunities for them to have their own source of income. Another problem is problem of social transition. This happens when there is an abrupt change of the situation or the environment of the client. For example, when one of the members of the family die, um, there is already a shift in social transition, especially if that family member is earning or is the breadwinner of the family, then chances are this type of problem could arise. Then we have difficulty in interpersonal relationship. Um, yes, conflict with beliefs and behaviors of different kinds of people. Okay, so it happens. No, it happens. Difficulty of role performance. If there are people who have multiple roles that is being portrayed, and then there will come a point in their lives where they cannot carry the burden anymore of portraying different roles or various roles at the same time. So they may bug down, and it may cause serious problem to them. Then we have dissatisfaction in social relations. Okay, when you are not satisfied with what you have when it comes to the social life that you have, the social relationship that you have with other people, no, but this happened actually in just maybe one party, no, and then the other person or other group may not be aware that there is that feeling of dissatisfaction in social relation. Okay. Then problem with formal organizations. Yes, in social work we have actually what we call industrial social worker, wherein the social worker is being assigned in an industry or in the companies in order to protect the rights of the employees. Okay, so problem with formal organizations happen if there are organizations where the person is a member of, and then problems may arise. Reactive emotional distress, how you respond to your stresses sometimes. I mean, people have different kinds of reactions to stress. Some are fighters, some are not. Some easily surrender, no, by their minds getting affected to the point of asking for a social worker to facilitate or to help them. Impact of natural calamities and social unrest. Well, Mindanao or Maguindanao is housed with natural calamities, social conflicts, no armed conflicts. That's why social workers are needed in our area. Problem of borderline pathology. There are some people who gets too affected with his or her own problem that sometimes they are moving out of of their own reality, but still they are in touch with the reality, but there are some changes wherein they get to about to about to cross the border. That's why borderline pathology, about to cross the border of the reality and of some world. Okay. And lastly, the problem of being a client. This is what I told you a while ago, that Magindanaons, Maranaos, and other ethnic groups and cultural minorities have this mentality in mind that, hey, I'm a Magindanaon, so I don't need help. Hey, I'm a Maranao, I don't need help. And if they become client, that becomes a problem to them. I can still remember during the Marawi siege where Maranaos were being helped by the people, but there are some, no, there are some Maranaos who refuse to be helped because of their maratabat, because they believe that they are higher in status compared to other people, and so they refuse the help. But Alhamdulillah, they still stand on their own. Okay. So the third component is the place. So you might be wondering where or why didn't we consider social worker as a person? No, I haven't discussed social worker in the first component, in the person. And this is the answer, the place. The place is the social welfare agency set up by government or a group, because there are different types of agencies. No, there are public, there are private. Groups of concerned citizens to deal with social personal problems in the management of their personal lives. No? So to be more specific, social work agency is an organization specifically set up to provide social work services. How are we going to identify that an agency is a social work agency? Very simple. If they are using the social work method, may it be casework, group work, or CO, or the combination of the three methods. And the social work agency's main function is to help people with problems of social functioning. Okay, so there are different types of agency according to first source of support, according to source of professional authority, and according to agency function. So types of agency according to source of support, there are two. We have public agencies and private agencies. Very simple. Public agency source of support is the government. It comes from the taxes of the people. So the government funds the public agencies. On the other hand, private agencies get their support, get their finances from private individuals or private groups through donations. Okay? Types of agency according to source of professional authority. How do they function? What is their authority to function? No? So we have primary setting and secondary setting. Um, Primary setting agencies gets their professional authority through the Republic Act, through law. As far as social work profession is concerned, our primary setting is the Department of Social Welfare and Development, and it is being created out of the Republic Act 5416, or the Social Welfare Law. Okay, so it cannot operate without the law. Whereas secondary setting are agencies in which their professional authority comes from the DSWD and then the Security and Exchange Commission. Ibig sabihin, before they can operate as a social welfare agency or a social work agency, they have to register first to the DSWD and the SEC, and follow certain procedures, and submit certain requirements. And lastly, types of agency according to agency function, we have multifunctional agency. These are agencies who cater different types of problems and different types of clientele. On the other hand, we have the specialized agencies. These specialized agencies only cater one specific type of clientele or one category. For example, um, if one agency only caters children, then they are a specialized agency. Save the Children Fund, for example, an international organization who caters, or which caters basically children, so they are specialized. The SWD is a multifunctional agency because there are different clientele groups there. Okay, we have casework. We have for senior citizens. We have for children. We have for youth. We have for women, and etc. etc. Okay. So next, the characteristics of social agencies. Okay. So we can consider social agencies as a social agency or social welfare agency if it possesses this following characteristics. So first, the social agency is an expression of values and will of a society or some group in that society as to welfare. So you observe the agency, they have their vision, mission, and goals. And you will see there that the component or the content of the VMG of a social welfare agency revolves around helping people, helping the society. Each social agency administers and operates a program intended to meet and alleviate the problem area with which it is concerned. Social welfare agencies are non income generating agencies. Okay? So they do not generate income. What they provide are programs to help the people solve their problem. Third, the social agency has a structure by which it organizes, defines, and delegates the responsibilities and tasks and issues operating policies and procedures. All agencies naman are like that. No, we have our structure because we cannot perform well, we cannot function well if there is no clear description of the responsibilities and obligations of every employee in the agency. The social agency should be a living, dynamic, viable organism which can be understood and changed and developed to meet changing needs and situations. It should be a living organism. It should be alive. It should contain people. It should be active. It should be dynamic because it should meet the needs of the people depending on the situation. Okay, so since the environment is dynamic, our problems are dynamic, it keeps changing. So the organization, in order for it to last longer, it has to be dynamic also, and it has to adjust to the changing needs of the environment. Fifth, every staff member in an agency speaks and acts for some part of the agency's functions, and the caseworker represents the agency in its individual health. This is the answer to my previous question, why didn't I include social worker in the person? It's because specifically when you talk about the person in social work, or as far as social work is concerned, that means client. Social worker is being described in the agency because the social worker represents the agency. Sometimes even when you go to the community and then someone will say, oh, ito yung taga DSWD, they don't basically call your names. What they call you are your agency, the names in your chalecos. Okay? The worker, while representing his agency, is first and foremost a representative of his profession. So please, we always have to bear in mind those things. Yes, you are a social worker, you represent your agency, but never forget you represent the profession. Everything that you have learned in the classroom and during the trainings of different organizers, you always have to consider that you are a social worker and you are a professional that needs to follow the certain guidelines or ethics of being a professional, because you are a representative of your profession and one wrongdoing could reflect to other professionals. Then the last component is the process. So again, we will discuss this separately in the next lesson. That would be all. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something from this presentation. If you have some questions, comments, or you want to share some of your experiences related to the topic, you can just PM me. Till the next lesson.